What's going on, guys? Stefan here with you, S&E's Garage. Today we have our pile of junk, aka the 2AZ-FE engine out of this Camry with a blown head gasket and oil consumption problems. And before I commit to putting a brand new used engine in this thing, we're gonna go ahead and tear it down. So like I said, we're going to tear this thing down, at least down to the head, just to see what's going on. If the threads in the block are good, I'm going to save it. I cannot find a decent used engine for this car under $1,800, and that's with rare, between 100 and 150,000 miles. That's kind of where I want to stay with this if I'm putting a good used engine in it. So before I dump that kind of coin in this thing, I want to go ahead and just verify what we have going on in here. So I'm going to throw you up on the tripod over here. We're going to put you on a time lapse and we're going to start ripping this thing apart. I'm going to start up here with the valve cover, just a bunch of 10mm bolts. Then we're going to switch gears over here to the front cover. I got to take my I got to take my my belt tensioner off, water pump pulley off, and just various other little gizmos here. We have our timing chain tensioner we're going to have to take off back here, and then we can get this front cover off. So just stick tight. Once I get the valve cover off, I'm going to take you off the tripod. We're going to take a look at the valve train, see what kind of maintenance history this thing had. I always like pulling valve covers on engines because it gives you the full story of how the thing was maintained. If everything's in there is, dark and varnished, it probably saw some extended drain intervals. And if it's nice and clean, it was well maintained. So again, tripod, time lapse, let's get it. Okay, so this definitely isn't the cleanest engine I've ever seen, but it's also not the worst. Take a look at these cam lobes. There's a little bit of wear, nothing, uncharacteristic for 100 and whatever this has on it, 189,000 miles. I did notice this timing chain is a little bit loose if you look here, but that just might be because the engine hasn't ran for a while and, the tensioner's bled down. I can see some of our paint here on the timing chain is actually starting to wear off, so that is going to tell me that this chain might be stretched. That's kind of how you can tell if these things are still within their limits, is if you can still see the paint marks, and you can see this pink one here is pretty worn. So let's go ahead now, back on the time lapse. We're going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to pull this water pump pulley off. We're going to get this tensioner set up out of the way, and then we're going to work on pulling off this front cover. All right, guys, so you saw us get that timing cover off. The timing cover was a little bit of a pain in the butt because technically you're supposed to drop the oil pan. I didn't want to do that yet, so I had to use a Torx bit to remove a stud from the bottom of the timing cover, but we got that off. And while we are here, let's just go ahead and inspect our guides. And these guides actually look like they are in fantastic shape. None of these are cracked or anything. So I am definitely going to be reusing these guides. They're not, if you look here, they're not remotely scored or anything. And I do think that I am going to reuse this chain because the two yellow links are still okay. And even though the pink one's a little bit weak, when I took that tensioner off, it clicked like 7 or 8 times when I removed it. So the tensioner was nowhere near maxed out. There's still plenty of room for this thing to apply more tension if it needs to. So we are going to reuse all this stuff. But let's go ahead now and let's start pulling the camshafts. It is very important when you pull these, you're going to want to start in a position where the cam is not being held down by the springs, basically. So if you see one of the cams putting tension on the springs, save that cap for last. But we're just going to work our way around, pull the intake cam, pull the exhaust cam, and then we can go ahead and pull the head. Alright guys, so you'll see here we got our cams out. Everything here actually looks pretty good. It is a little bit dirty, but all the cam bearings are in nice shape. The bearings are built into the head and there's really no scoring on them. Everything looks pretty good. So now what we're going to be doing is removing the head. And to remove that, you are going to need this guy right here. It is a 12 millimeter. I forget what they call this, honestly. It's like a star bit, inverted Torx, I'm not sure. I have one from when I worked at Hyundai, because the cylinder head bolts were the same. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and crack all these loose. I'm not going to go in any specific order. I'm just going to start from the outside and work my way towards the center. I don't have the service manual for this car, and there is a good chance that this engine is not going to be serviceable. So let's go ahead. Let's start taking the head off, and I'm not going to do a time lapse. I'm going to do this in real time because I want you guys to see what kind of effort it takes for me to remove these head bolts. If they come out real easy, especially the ones in between 2 and 3, we're going to know that there's something going on in this block. So let me just go ahead, glove back up, and let's pull the head. You are going to have to go ahead and remove your 2 front cam caps, the ones up here, and then this cam bearing here that sits here is going to be in the way of that head bolt. So we did just go ahead and pull that out, but let's crack this head loose. It's hard to do one person. So far, so good. Ooh. We might be okay. We might just have a blown head gasket. Let's go ahead and pull these the rest of the way out and see if we pulled any threads. These are torque to yield, so I will not be reusing them. I am just taking a look at these threads when I pull them out to make sure that there is no aluminum on there, because if we see aluminum, that's going to be a big problem, but let's hope that we don't. Maybe we're lucky. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this cam bearing back in place with the cap so it does not get misplaced. And this head should, in theory, be ready to come out. Okay. Off with her head. Let's see what we can't see here with this MLS gasket here. Okay, so before I even remove this head gasket, I want to show you what I see here. You need to look for telltale signs of these gaskets failing because it's a multi-layer steel gasket. They don't fail in the traditional way. Traditionally with like an old school, I don't know if you want to call it a cork gasket or not, but the composite gaskets, when they fail, they blow out. That doesn't happen here. What I want you to see is that this coolant jacket right here, that black coating has worn away, and you can see that it is also worn between the two cylinders. So that explains why we had leak down on these two cylinders into each other. So when I pressurized this, the air was getting into here, and we can see that right here with this gasket. So let's go ahead and get this gasket off the rest of the way, like so. That is going to be discarded. So our next step here, I'm not going to do this today. I'm done for the night. This was what I wanted to do. Our next step is going to be to check the deck of this block to make sure that it is straight. We're going to put a straight edge across it. We're going to test it with a feeler gauge, make sure everything's good there. If everything's good there, we're going to do the same with the cylinder head. If the cylinder head is straight, I'm ordering a new head gasket, and I'm also probably going to be doing the pistons in this thing. These walls actually look phenomenal. There's very, very minimal, actually there's almost no scoring, and I can still see the crosshatch, which is absolutely huge. So let's leave off here, and we'll pick back up tomorrow. All right, guys, so off camera we just did a little bit of inspecting here. I went ahead and threw my crank pulley on there just to check it out, and we spun the engine over a couple times. I wanted to get the number off of the pistons, or the letter off of the pistons, so that when I call Toyota tomorrow, I know exactly which pistons that I need to order. So our number one piston is an A. You can see the number or the letter right there. So we have an A. Down here we have a B. Down here we have a B. And up here we have another B. So we're going to need one A and 3 Bs, and then we can go ahead and order the rest of the kit. Once I get the kit, I'll give you all the part numbers, leave everything you know, in the video so you know exactly what you're ordering. But let's get everything ordered and we'll be back with you. All right, guys, so we got our head just about ready to go over to the machine shop. We pulled all of our buckets out, and I wanted to make a note of that. When you remove these buckets, it's super important that you number them, because underneath there are different thicknesses: 45, 48, 50. These buckets dictate valve clearance, and if you don't want to go absolutely crazy trying to set valve clearances, you need to take them off, you need to number them. So we have our intake 1 through 8 here, exhaust 1 through 8 there, because that's the way we took the engine apart. The front is facing that way, so front. So that's what we did. Now, I made a comment earlier that I was going to replace these head bolts. I'm waiting to get a hold of the service manual. I gotta run to the shop, you know, one of my buddy's shops, and look on all data. I'm pretty sure these can be reused, but you have to measure from the shank of the bolt all the way to the end, and if it's within spec, they can be reused. Hopefully mine are in spec, because these are actually $15 a piece. 15 times 10 is 150. That adds $150 to the parts that we need for this thing. I went ahead, I called Toyota, I got a quote. Like I said, I'm waiting to place that order to see if I can save, you know, 150, 160 bucks with tax on these head bolts. So stay tuned. This head is going to the machine shop today to get checked if it's straight. I'm telling them that I would rather them not cut it. They say they can cut up to 20 thousandths off this head, but I've read otherwise and I've been told otherwise. So I'm gonna have them check it, and if it's super warped and they can't you know, save it with a skim cut. I'm probably going to try to find a good used head, but that's where we're at. Stay tuned. When we get more parts for this thing, we're going to go ahead, flip it over, and we're going to tackle the bottom end. All right, guys, so off camera, we did go ahead and get our oil pan off, and as you'll see, there's a little bit of sludge down here. So this thing definitely wasn't maintained as good as it should have been, but the oil pump right up front here is actually nice and clean. The balance shaft looks halfway decent, and we did have to go ahead and use a turbo socket here to get a lot of these bolts off for the pan. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work our way around here, and we're going to pull the upper or the lower, it would be the lower oil pan off with the balance shaft. I'm going to leave the shaft on the unit here. We are going to have to remove this adapter for the oil filter and then just go around and remove the rest of the bolts. And then we'll get a good look at our crank, and we can start unbolting the rods and dropping the pistons. All right, guys, so as you just saw, we did go ahead and get all of the rod and piston assemblies out of the engine. Unfortunately for us, this thing was definitely ran low on oil, at least once, because you can see the bearings did catch a little bit, but luckily they are the sacrificial metal here. So like I said, if you just look, you can see these are pretty scored up and are going to be in need of replacement. But, and this is awesome, the mains are in great condition just based on how nice and freely this crank spins. You spin it and it just keeps spinning. So I'm not even going to bother pulling the main caps. Usually the mains are the last bearings to go. So all I am really going to have to do is just wipe down these crank journals real nice. I don't feel any of this scoring with my fingers, so that is a huge plus. So we'll just clean these up with some Scotch-Brite or some emery cloth, get them nice and smooth, and we're going to go ahead and order our bearings. Again, now we are 100% in a holding pattern while we wait for parts. Now I can go ahead very quickly and just flip this back upside down and show you now with no pistons. Let me grab a flashlight here, if I can find it. Here it is. Just take a look at the bores, because they are actually in phenomenal shape. You can see all of the crosshatch, and in the service manual they actually tell you if you can't see the crosshatch to replace the short block assembly. So luckily we can see the crosshatch on all 4 holes, so the block is good. So let's go ahead, again, parts, we'll be back with you. Okay guys, so really quick, let's just show you where we're at here. We came in here and we cleaned the deck of this block, got it nice and clean. All the old gasket is off of it, and it's just about as clean as I need it to be. I didn't want to gouge this, so you can't feel any of this with your fingernail. It's just a little discoloration. We used a plastic Scotch-Brite disc, bristle disc they call it, to clean that up, so we're good there. We went ahead and threw our upper oil pan with the balance shaft assembly in the parts washer, cleaned it up, cleaned both mating, or all three mating surfaces. We cleaned off this mating surface, the one for the oil pan, and then we also cleaned this mating surface. Went ahead and cleaned the oil pump, and now I just got to scrape away all the old gasket that is on this oil pan, and we'll be ready to go. I also did come up under here and clean this surface of the block. So now, like I said, holding pattern, parts. Just kind of wanted to show you where we're at and what we've done. All right, guys, we got some goodies back here from the machine shop. You'll see our cylinder head is now nice, shiny, and clean. They went ahead and gave it a nice skim cut for us, so they didn't take a whole ton of meat off. They just cleaned it up, made sure it was straight, and it is. Now, they did inform me that several of the exhaust valves are leaking, meaning they pressure tested the head. Cooling system was okay, but if we come back here, he said the exhaust valves that are white, so these two and those two are leaking, meaning that they're not sealing completely. So what we went ahead and did is we ordered valve guide seals for this thing. So what we're going to do when they get here is we're going to disassemble this whole head. I'm going to pull all 16 valves out of it. I'm going to lay them out in the same order that we laid out our buckets, because these valves will need to go back in the same holes that they came out of. But what we're going to do is we're going to lap them. So we're going to use some lapping compound that I have hidden somewhere in my toolbox when I find it. Here it is, valve compound. We're going to go ahead, we're going to lap all 16 valves, clean all the carbon off of them. These valve seats are hardened, so they really shouldn't be bad, especially with only 180,000 miles on it. So we're going to lap them all, clean them all up, slap it back together, put our new guide seals and put our buckets back in, and then the head will be ready. All right, guys, so I think we're going to go ahead and call this video complete. We got everything done that we needed to figure out exactly what went on with this engine, and we are now committed to fixing it. So we, like I said, got everything ordered. Our parts should be here within the next couple of days, and then we can go ahead and start reassembling. So I'm going to start with the short block. We're going to get the short block put back together with the new bearings, new pistons and rings, and then from there we'll recondition the head. So that'll be in our next video. Hopefully in the next video we do with this thing, we get the engine running. That would be huge. And then all we got to do then is register it. I got to get it to pass inspection there. We're going to have to weld a new flex pipe in, so we'll go ahead and do that. We got a new axle for it, so we will go ahead and do that. And then it'll be out on the street with a for sale sign. So if this video interested you, please like, share, and subscribe. There is tons more content coming on this car, because like I said, we have to do the whole reassembly, first start, things like that. So please like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.